Sha-En is a best-selling author and recent TEDx speaker. She has been featured on TV, Business Times, and Money 89.3 FM. As the founder of Happiness Scientists, Sha-En has trained more than 10,000 people in the research and practice of positive psychology.
In order to strengthen a relationship, we should be responding to the people in our lives with an elevating response. In other words, communicate in order to elevate. What if tonight, or maybe tomorrow, you could use your words and your communication to uplift and elevate your spouse, your children, your co-workers, people in the community.
Hi everyone, welcome to this episode on my channel. I'm very happy to introduce Ms. Sha-En Yeo, who is the founder of Happiness Scientists and is well known in Singapore as one of the thought leaders in mental health wellness. So I'm very happy to have you here with me, Sha-En.
Thanks, Jenna. Thanks for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
Yeah, thank you for taking time off your busy schedule. I think because recently there's been a lot of demand on how to improve mental health wellness, and that's one of the reasons why I wanted to invite you on my channel in this particular episode, because one of the top votes went into how can one actually cope with mental stress, especially in these challenging times. So without further ado, actually what I'll do is I'll straight off ask you the first question. What are the common signs that you can see when you're going through mental stress?
I think we must be clear whether it is something that is happening frequently. For example, what is different from your normal behavior? That's how we can differentiate whether things are actually getting worse or not. Right? One of the common things that people ask me is, how do I know that I'm okay? Right? And so if we notice that, for example, our heart rate is very fast, or we have very high, quick pace of breathing, or we have anxious thoughts or like negative thoughts almost coming in all the time. And when we can't seem to control these thoughts or emotions, that's one of the signs of stress, right? Because if we have on normal times, for example, if we're feeling good, when we have these thoughts, we'll say, okay, we can rationalize it away. We can tell ourselves, this too shall pass. But when we are in a great distress, then these thoughts come in frequently, they are very intrusive, and then you do not know how to respond, you don't know how to control it. And when that is paired with the physical symptoms, like your increased heart rate, you start to sweat, you start to worry a lot. For some people, they start to talk very fast or they pace up and down, then you can tell that maybe they're in some distress. So these are more active signs. There are also the not so active signs, such as when people may be on the verge of burnout or depressed, they start to be a little bit more withdrawn. They seem to like give up interest in a lot of things that they used to be interested in, right? So maybe normally they are very interactive and very chatty. Suddenly they don't feel like meeting anybody. Suddenly they just want to do everything by themselves, you know, or else they will say things like, what's the point? Do already, also no use. Right? In the past, maybe they were quite active, they were problem solve. So what we want to see is a contrast from a normal behavior. Suddenly you have a shift in behavior. And it could be on the panicky side, the anxious side, or it could be on the depressed side, which is kind of lower in the presentation of symptoms.
I see. But I guess a lot of us, right, during these very stressful times where we have to spend a lot of time at home, or especially for people who are at work, they may also be worried about whether they are losing their jobs. How do you tell whether the stress levels are to an extent that you really need to seek help, or when you notice the signs that you're able actually to just do some simple things to be better?
Yeah, so like you mentioned, Jen, I think first is awareness, right? So we can do a very simple check-in by just using a scale. Even though it's not a scientific measure, it's still a numerical measure of your self-awareness of how you're feeling. So let's say from a scale of 0 to 10, how are you feeling? So for example, on normal days, if you were to really record it, let's say most of the time you feel 7 upon 10, right? Because that's pretty good. If let's say 10 being good and 1 being really bad. But then maybe over the last few weeks, you've noticed that the mood levels has dropped to like 3 or 2. And you notice that this is prolonged over a period of time. That's when we can start to say, oh, maybe there's something not so right, especially if there hasn't been any particular trigger in your life, right? So for example, let's say your boss has been particularly 忙张 recently, and because they keep hounding you for deadlines, you notice that your levels are low. Maybe there is a correlation there. But let's say none of that is happening, there's no stress at home, and you still feel like that. That's when we can really, start to be on the alert, and don't wait until it has been happening for months, and a number 2 or number 1 before you seek help. So by doing a simple check-in like that, we can actually help ourselves to say, okay, I notice that every time I do my check-in, I'm at level 2 or 3. And even though I'm trying my best to do all the things that I used to like to do, it doesn't seem to be helping. Yeah, so that's when we can say, hey, maybe we need a second layer of help, or reach out to somebody.
I see. So there are basically two parts here. I think what you're mentioning is because all of us do go through stress. So there are some simple things that we can do to get ourselves more relieved. But if we do a common check in terms of the scale over a period of time, would you say 1 week or 2 weeks or 1 month?
I would say it's something that we can do like at the start of the day or even at the end of the day. So something you just become like habit, right? You wash your hands.
For how long a period would it be if you rate yourself about a 1 or a 2, then you really need to seek some attention or medical attention?
I would say if it's really over a period from say 2 to 4 weeks and you notice that the number is consistently very low, yeah, you would also probably feel it in your body as well. So I would say, yeah, go and talk to someone about it.
Okay. Okay. Then the next question I would like to ask you, on the normal circumstance where you actually feel stressed, what are some of the things that you can do to help relieve stress? And what are the steps that you will need to take if you notice consistently over a period of 3 to 4 weeks or a month where you are already rating yourself at a 1 or 2 on that scale?
Yeah, so some of the simple things, I think if let's say you're feeling panicky or stress levels are up there, I would say the first thing that you can do is to try to support your nervous system. So when you're anxious, when you're stressed, right, your heart rate goes up. The nervous system is on alert. You're in this state which we call fight or flight, right? Because the emotional control center of your brain is suddenly telling you you are in danger, even though it's not like the fighting kind of danger, but we are fighting an invisible enemy in this case. So we're on high alert. So the first thing you want to do is try to calm down that part of your brain, and the best way to do that is to really pause, right? When you notice that, and then take very deep breaths. So one of the strategies that we use to try to manage that is to breathe in for 4 seconds, and then we hold our breath 7 seconds, and then we breathe out slowly for 8 seconds. And for a start, you can do 4 cycles of that, because what that does is introduces more oxygen to your body, which calms us down, right? And then once we're calmed down, when we breathe out, we help the nervous system also to come back to baseline. And then by doing 4 cycles of that, we bring back a little bit of that calm into our life. And then that's when, at least physically, we have calmed down a little bit. Then we can start to deal with maybe there are negative emotions that we're feeling or negative thoughts, or maybe there is a particular situation at work that's very acute. Then we can at least be a bit calmer and more objective when we're trying to deal with the stress.
I see. When you see that the condition has worsened, who do you normally seek first? Do you actually go to see a psychologist? Do you see a psychiatrist? What do you do?
Well, I mean, I think before we go and seek professional help, I think it's good that we employ some other strategies. For example, going for walks in nature, things like that, so that we at least have tried some of our basic coping mechanisms. Getting enough rest. During the pandemic, a lot of us are not actually getting good quality sleep. And when we are not getting good quality sleep, we become fatigued. And when we are fatigued, we are easily triggered. All the stressors that last time maybe stress us up 2 upon 10, now become a 10 upon 10, sometimes when we're exhausted. So we need to make sure that our basic needs are being met. And then we need to employ some of the positive coping mechanisms. Talking to friends, even if it's on the phone, it does help to know that somebody else is there with you and that you're not alone. Many other strategies, maybe even just taking time to appreciate the things that are going well, as opposed to things that are not going well. I know sometimes not always easy to do, but let's say we've tried all these and you realize, hey, none of this is helping, then maybe that's when the professional help, somebody who can listen to you therapeutically, maybe more effective than a friend who may not have the right skills or strategies to support you for that level of support that you need.
Great. Thanks, Sha-En. The next question I'd like to ask is basically, I think even if we are coping with it quite well in terms of stress levels, how can I help someone whom I notice, whether it's my loved one, my family, in coping with stress from their work, their school, or their relationship?
Yeah, I think many people have asked me this question. I think it's just being present is a very important step. Sometimes we are distracted by the multiple distractions in our life, whether it's from work, whether it's from family, that sometimes when people are talking to us, we are not fully there with them. Our physical body is there, but our mind is elsewhere. And also when we listen, we also want to listen not just for the content of what they're saying to us. We can listen with empathy, meaning that we try to step into their shoes and try to understand what they're experiencing. And we hold space for their feelings. Most of the time during challenging situations, people have very intense, sometimes negative emotions. And if they don't have a platform or don't have someone where these emotions can actually be expressed, that is what leads to internal distress. So the best thing we can do is to hold space and listen. And if we don't have anything to say, it's totally fine. Many people feel like it's silent, I'm not doing enough. But sometimes what they really need is to know that someone cares. Not so much that they need the advice right at that moment, not so much that you need to be the most intelligent person in the room at that time, but just reminders that, hey, you are trying the best that you can in this time, and I hear you. And while I may not fully understand what you're experiencing, I'm here for you. And I think that can go a very long way. The other part is to be a good friend is also to notice some of the signs that we mentioned earlier. If you notice your friend's behavior really shifting over a period of time and you recognize that they might need some help, if you are close enough, I would suggest that you can say, hey, maybe it's something that you can consider. We can't force anyone to seek further help, but because of our love and our concern, we can hopefully influence them to take steps to seek that extra support.
Yeah, thanks for your suggestion. I think it's true. For instance, when I was speaking to my son, usually he doesn't want me to give any kind of comments. He just wants us to listen. So being there, showing that you care and listening to them is one crucial point. And I also understand, Sha-En, that you have online courses and starting some new programs on how you can basically help anyone who might be at stress and how they can regain their positivity in life. Would you care to share with us what you're working on in your latest projects?
Yeah, so my latest project is really supporting working mothers who often find themselves bearing a lot of the caregiving load, not just the physical caregiving of children or even the elderly, like the sandwich generation, but also the emotional load of the family. And at the same time, they want to be financial contributors. They want to play their role as a family member, right? And so they're working hard and they work hard and they're climbing the ladder, but that means that sometimes they are pulled and stretched in many directions. And as a result, many of them do feel like they're struggling. Either they've lost the purpose in what they're doing, they just, like a hamster and it will just keep going and going. And sometimes when they come home, they feel guilty that they haven't spent enough time with their children. When they spend time with the children, they feel like, oh, I haven't done enough for my work. So it's almost like they're stuck. Yeah, and I've heard so many stories of women coming to share with me during my webinars, during my coaching sessions, and I just felt, we give so much. Surely there's something that I can do to bring back the happiness into their life, help them to feel connected to the things that they love to do, so they don't have to feel so negative. So yeah, I'm working on that. It's a coaching program combined with a masterclass. Yeah, so really excited about it and hope to have more women who come forward and decide to do something for themselves.
That's great. When are you intending to launch this masterclass?
Actually, my first webinar is coming up this Thursday.
Great. So Sha-En, what I would do is I will definitely include the link to your masterclass or any of the webinar that is going to be scheduled. And for the audience or the viewers that are in this particular channel, I'll be including her links, the description about Sha-En, as well as the links to her courses and website on how you can contact her in the video description. Thank you for your time, Sha-En.
Yeah, thank you, Janet. Thanks for having me. I hope it's been helpful.
Yes, it's definitely been helpful. And thank you, everyone. See you the next week. Goodbye.
Bye.